Chapter 10, My Walk with the Messiah, with the Mind to Follow. Let's take a walk. We came up in a household with a single mom raising two boys in Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, affectionately known as the DMV today. My mother, Miss Betty Jean Lee, got us out of the city at an early age. We spent a lot of time growing up in Suitland, Maryland. My mom worked real hard. In fact, most of her time was spent at work, church, and adding to her skill set to bring in more cash to feed her family. She would drag me and my brother along with her to church seemingly every day. I'm exaggerating, but you know how it goes. Choir rehearsals, Bible study, Super Salad Sunday, the church picnic, etc. It was always something going on at church. Needless to say, at a certain point, Miss Betty got tired of wrestling with us every time she had to go to church. And this is where the exploration process begins. Remember my little cousin introduced us to marijuana when he was 9 years old? After Mo snuck weed from his pops and introduced it to me and my brother, this started a journey that we had no idea of what was ahead of us. We didn't know what we were doing until one day Lil Daryl came over. Lil Daryl moved to the neighborhood from Northeast D.C. He practically lived around the corner from a drug strip before his mom moved to our neighborhood. So when he came over and saw what we were doing, he said, nope, y'all doing it wrong. We were rolling up weed with toilet paper. Picture that. Lil Daryl said, you need to get top papers. He left and came back with some tops. He sat at the table and began to teach. He was only 12 years old, mind you. He started picking the seeds out and said, these seeds have to be taken out because they'll start popping and making the joint go out. And you will have to keep lighting it up. Picture a 12-year-old sticking the papers together, spreading the weed out in it, and rolling up the joint like a professional. Then he wanted to see us light the joint. My brother lit the joint and Lil Daryl said, nope, you have to pull on it. He took it out of my brother's hand, pulled on it, choked, and while still holding in the smoke, he said, that's how you hit the joint. So even though we had been smoking marijuana, we were not getting high until the master teacher, Lil Daryl, came and taught the lesson. Our world was changing fast. There's so much that took place throughout the years as teenagers that this writing will not cover. But it starts when Mo, 9 years old, and myself, 10 years old, my brother, who was 11 years old, and little Daryl, who was 12 years old, got together. It didn't stop there. I'm going to jump to when I was 19 years old. By then, I was not only smoking marijuana, I was drinking alcohol, smoking PCP, which we call Love Boat. I had been snorting cocaine, along with the biggest monster ever. I was smoking crack. I never thought that I would end up on crack because I had an encounter with it that scared the hell out of me. I had gone to New York on a crazy mission with another neighborhood friend who was like a brother, Ray Ray. Now, Lil Daryl taught us how to smoke weed, but Ray Ray taught us how to navigate through the street life. Even though I was not from the streets, I learned how to maneuver through them from my brother, Ray Ray. While in New York, we grabbed some pure cocaine that had been cooked down to rock form. We were in a hotel in Manhattan. I took a hit of it, and the people on the television screen in that hotel room looked like they were in the room with us. I said to myself, I ain't never doing that again. A few years later, me and my homie Spoon were about to smoke some PCP, and he suggested that we get some crack and lace the joint with crack. I met Spoon, Anthony Roy, in 1985. We were students at Lincoln Technical Institute in Capitol Heights, Maryland. I said, no, I ain't messing with that crack. He said, I'm telling you, Mike, it's nothing like smoking crack. It's real smooth. And boy, he was telling the truth. It was so smooth that it was a wrap. I was hooked. There are so many stories that I can share about my upbringing with the people mentioned so far. And if I tell these stories in a book, it will be like an action-packed movie on the big screen. However, we see enough of that already. In fact, this aspect of our community is glamorized and made so popular that we tend to get stuck in a vicious cycle of self-destruction. And my intent is to lay out principles that can help to break that cycle. In this living hell, my late Aunt Ann got me a job at 4000 Massachusetts Avenue in Northwest D.C. I was a porter in this high-rise building. One day, while cleaning out the trash room, I saw the back of a book laying there on the floor to be thrown down to the trash chute. I picked it up and looked at the cover. Before I went to throw it down the trash chute, I read something like, "From pimp to hoodlum, to hustler to genius, Malcolm X." I was intrigued. I'm around hoodlums, hustlers, and pimps all day, every day. I was wondering how this dude became a genius. So I took the book home and could not put it down. I'm reading the autobiography of Malcolm X and it's blowing my mind. At 19, I had no idea who he was. I knew nothing of the black man's contribution to civilization. I knew nothing about the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, or the Nation of Islam. My mind was blown. The first reaction was anger. I became upset that all of this time had gone by and I had no idea of this very important information that would give me a greater sense of self. Something was happening with me. I was still on the block. I was still getting high, but I still was reading the book. I was sitting on the steps one day on the drug strip reading. An older brother came out of his building on his way to work and asked, "What's that you're reading, young man?" I showed him the cover and he said, "You keep reading that, and one day you're going to be dangerous." Now, the end of the book got real cloudy to me. I didn't understand the split between Brother Malcolm and the nation. However, I was so fascinated, my language began to change. Even still, I was still trapped behind the bars of my own thinking and hanging on that block. One day, on the strip, I was sitting on those same steps. A young brother who I had not seen around the way before called me into the building. I came to him and he showed me several bags of crack rocks. Each bag had $20 pieces in them. He asked, "You want some work?" My heart started beating real fast. I thought, who is this? I don't sell drugs. I abused him. As nervous as I was, I took him up on his offer only to immediately disappear. I got ghost so quick and unfortunately went home and smoked all 10 of those crack rocks back to back. My heart was beating so fast not only because of all those crack rocks that I smoked, but at the same time my thoughts were, "You were dead, man." This was the late 80s. D.C. was the murder capital of the country at that time. And I knew of people who were taken out for way less during those days. I didn't know this young brother at all. If I saw him today, I wouldn't even be able to identify him. One could say he was an angel because I was so afraid to go anywhere near that block again. I knew there would be no questions asked. So, where do I go? What do I do? Life, as I knew it, was changing fast. Around this time, the Fruit of Islam in Washington, D.C. had started going into the worst drug areas to help clean up the neighborhoods. I was attracted to the Nation of Islam. So, however, with the misunderstanding of the end of the autobiography of Malcolm X, along with the work the FOI were doing in the community, I was afraid to go straight to the mosque. So I did the next best thing and went back to church. My thoughts were to go and clean my life up a little before I go over to the Nation of Islam. I spent 6 years in the church growing spiritually. I spent 6 years under the leadership of Pastor Willie F. Wilson. Under this great teacher, I was blessed to get rid of drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes by getting involved and going through these steps highlighted in this book. The whole time I had been asking Allah, is it time to go to the mosque? I'm going to touch an area in my journey real quick. In the 4th step, in with the new, we talked about all of the time we would have on our hands after making a real decision to go clean. We also talked in this writing that illegal drugs are designed to appeal to the pleasure center. A great problem arose in my journey. During that time, after drugs and alcohol were no longer my vices, sex had become a major escape and my new drug of choice. Because of the danger of this disposition, it had become very clear to me that it was time for the military structure of the fruit of Islam that is found in the ranks of the Nation of Islam. Before we look at how I made my transition into the Nation of Islam, I want to share a moment in this journey that highlights a brotherly connection that took place between myself and one of the associate ministers in Union Temple. I remember being terminated from my job at FDIC. Everyone looked at me as Militant Mike. So most people ask, "What did you do this time?" Or, "Why did they get rid of you?" The energy and spirit was along the lines of assuring that I had it coming. But the first thing that Minister Eric Kareem asked was, "What can I do to help you, brother?" We established a strong bond of brotherhood. In fact, it was through Brother Kareem that I branched out on my own for the first time as an adult. We shared a place together, and I got the experience of paying my own bills. The beauty of this brotherhood was Brother Kareem had so many videotapes of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I would soak in the words from those lectures on a regular basis. Our bond became real strong. We bumped heads on occasion, and because we both were ball players, we never thought to go to blows. We said, "Let's take it to the court." And we would go to the gym and knock each other around in a few one-on-ones. Kareem gave his little brother a good spanking out there. But we left the court tighter than we were before we left our place going at each other. Leading up to our Men's Day service, September 19, 1993, where the keynote speaker was the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, there were rumors spreading in the church that I was leaving the church for this reason or that reason. The reasons that were spreading are not important. The fact that there were rumors is what I felt a need to address. So I sat with Pastor Wilson as a spiritual son and let him know. As any father would like to see that their son could leave the house and make what he has taught a reality, this is the necessary step for me to move to the next phase of discipline in my life. He understood and blessed my decision. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke. It was powerful as usual. I played bass for the Men's Day choir, and I was in my zone. After service, the minister went downstairs to the fellowship hall to shake hands with those who would like to greet him. I stood in that long line wondering, what would I say? By the time I came face to face with the minister, we exchanged the greetings and shook hands. Before I could say anything, "Bass player, right?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You play a good bass." I was blown away that he would acknowledge me when I was trying to figure out what to say to him. The only thing I could think was to say was, "Thank you for showing me what a free man looks like. I hope to be that way one day." He looked me through my eyes, down into my soul, and said, "Don't worry, brother. You will." This was the preface of my walk with the Messiah. My journey into the ranks of the Nation of Islam was about to begin. The next day, Monday, September 20th, 1993, I was in the processing class of the FOI at Muhammad's Mosque number 4 at 1615 Kenilworth Avenue, Northeast D.C. My journey, walking with the Messiah, began. I say walking with the Messiah with the mind to follow. Walking with the Messiah is a stage of development. In this stage, we are striving to make our word bond. We are in a process of discovery. This process is to walk us into becoming one with our God. There is a difference between walking with and following. Our desire is to become a true follower by totally shedding myself of the darkness of this world and fully living the life of one totally submitting my will to do the will of God. This part of my journey is full. It would take several books to touch this aspect of my life, so I would just touch a few moments of the significance that speaks to the subject matter of this writing. The first thing is my introduction to the Final Call newspaper program. After about 4 weeks in the processing class, my lieutenant at the time, Brother Lieutenant Hassan Muhammad, pulled me to the side after class and handed me 25 Final Call newspapers and said, I want you to soldier these papers." I was excited and nervous at the same time. It was cold outside. I was brand new to this process, and I knew that people were going to test and try me with information that I would not be able to address. I challenged my fears and made it through. That was on a Saturday. I couldn't wait to get to the mosque to give my money to Brother Hassan. I saw him and gave him the money. Because of the time, we had to get situated for the meeting. After the meeting, Brother Hassan came up to me and gave me back some of the money. He said, "You know you keep 30%. I was lit. See, growing up, we were always attracted to the drug dealer. My problem with that is that I broke all of the rules. And instead of making money, I smoked up everything that I can get my hands on. But this got me excited because I knew that I could finally build myself up to do for self. Any of you who know me knows that the block became my way of life. The beauty of this is that the same principles of hanging around until the mission was accomplished in this world of addiction became a great discipline in the world of doing for self. As a drug addict, the determination, dedication, consistency, and drive to get the next hit had become identical to the desire to be successful each day in reaching my daily goals pushing the program. So the same principles that were taking me down and out of life, used properly, are the very principles that feed my heart, mind, and soul for success on the other side of the equation. The next point I would like to make about this journey is my marriage. We are taught that marriage is half of our faith. One of the best things that has taken place in my life, in my walk with the Messiah, is my marriage to Sister Nanika Muhammad. Why is this significant for this writing? The Holy Quran teaches that men are the maintainers of women. This is a great responsibility. It tests the fiber of your being to maintain a woman physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, and economically. It is a major challenge to strive to become one with another human being. Accepting the challenge puts us on a course to become followers of the Messiah. This, in turn, puts us on track to become one with Allah God. In a counseling session with our student Mid-Atlantic Regional Minister Abdul Qadir Muhammad, he said a lot that speaks to the mindset that must be developed as a man and a husband. For instance, Brother Qadir said, "We are taught that what's yours is hers, and what's hers is hers." This helps to shape the mind of a maintainer. When you enter into marriage with the mindset, it forces the mind to elevate to take on the task. He asked my courtmate at the time, "What do your feet hit each morning when you wake up?" She confusedly said, "Carpet." He looked back towards me and said, "You hear that, brother? She shouldn't have anything less. You have to be willing to shovel dog mess to take care of our sister." This was such a great encounter. It set my mind to stay determined to weather any storm. The whole process and journey of marriage helps to keep the mind straight. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches a nation can rise no higher than its woman. He also has a lecture titled How to Give Birth to a God. That's the other part about marriage that makes my life in this journey so rewarding. The fact that my wife is all in when it comes to her MGT, GCC, Muslim Girls Training, and General Civilization class. When it was time to give birth, the thought of giving birth to a God was foremost in her mind. And because she was free to be Muslim, free to be a wife, free to be a mother, she raised our daughter as a citizen of the Nation of Islam. Our daughter, Tasneem Muhammad, was either homeschooled or in one of our schools in the Nation of Islam up until college. She graduated high school at 16 years old as valedictorian. At 19 years old, Sister Tasneem is in her senior year in college. She has been an honor student all of her life. This is encouragement for the reader who may have gotten caught up in drug addiction, who thinks nothing good can come from their loins. By the grace of Almighty Allah, never count yourself out. Your life is not over until you take your last breath. And depending how you live your life while on this earth will determine whether you live beyond the grave. I'm not talking about the great by and by in the sky, but how will you be remembered? Or will you be forgotten? Drop dead and then your life stops? No, 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 no. Leave a lasting impression on those who cross your path. The last thing I want to point out in my walk with the Messiah is this. When I stated to the minister that I hoped to one day be free, and he assured me that I would, I had no idea that I would one day relocate to our headquarters here in Chicago. Well, here we are in Chicago because of the desire to be free. Regardless of what job I landed, I always ended up back on the block. It always was a struggle, but there always was a level of peace within as well. It reminds me of the late soldier, Brother Maurice 2X, who had become Brother Maurice Muhammad. May Allah be pleased. Early in my block days, he came up to me and said, Brother Michael, you don't want to do this for 10 years. My feet hurt, Brother Michael. I knew what he was saying. But he was stuck on the block himself and did not know how to guide me. I love him forever for planting that seed in me. Needless to say, I ended up on the block for 20 years. However, I learned how to make one of the best bean pies in the country. And by Allah's grace, my work ethics and determination have been noticed by many. I have to admit that this is another quality of the addict. An addict's work ethic, when it comes to getting that next hit, is impeccable. Before I left the DMV, one of the closest brothers that I have been able to establish a bond with, Brother Raymond L. Muhammad, said to me, "It's going to be a lot of people watching you, Brother Michael." Let me explain something. Brother Raymond likes to keep things simple and straight to the point. However, everything he says has depth to it. While I'm talking about Brother Raymond, I have to say that most of what I have been able to acquire as far as a mindset to do for self comes from my relationship with him. For the 26 years that I've known him, I've never known him to punch the clock for someone else. Not only that, he has a wife and 6 children that he has been the sole provider for since I've known him. I also want to mention Brother Roger 2X Muhammad. Brother Roger was the first brother who made sure that I got a copy of my Supreme Wisdom lessons. And we used to pound the pavement for hours a day together to keep each other thinking properly to meet the goal. Back to the work ethic. The work ethic that I have been blessed to acquire in my day-to-day grind, along with the fact that we have a great product, was recognized by Sister Carmela Kokmart Muhammad. Sister Carmela was able to realize one of her desires to open a restaurant and decided to invite us in. This new reality, called the Foodie Spot, became one of the great highlights of hope for believers across our nation, as well as for the troubled community right across the street from Mosque Mariam. The community looks at the Foodie Spot as a breath of fresh air. It's a much-needed place where you can come and grab a good, healthy, and wholesome bite to eat. It is also the home of my brand, Paradise Desserts, LLC, and it's the place that helped me get off the block. It's also a great part of our efforts to realize this destination towards the freedom that we desire. In my conclusion, I want to point out a few words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to myself and Sister Carmela on his first visit to the Foodie Spot. He stood in the doorway and said, "Assalamu alaikum." He sounded just like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He stepped into the doorway and looked to his right at Sister Carmela and said, "Thank you for your courage, sister." Then he looked across the room to me and said, "Thank you for your courage, brother." He took a few steps in and looked around and said, "I feel good. I feel like you're going to be successful." Then he looked out of the door across the street at Mosque Mariam and said, "See? You don't have to wait for the mosque to do something like this." I point this out for everyone reading this writing. Step out on faith and do not wait for permission to do something courageous that would give hope to others on the fence contemplating on whether or not they are going to step out on faith. First and foremost, if you have gotten to this point in the book, words are not adequate to say how grateful and thankful I am. I truly appreciate you. It has been very therapeutic for me to recall this information, to put it all together. If you are struggling with addiction of any kind, I pray that you have the courage to go through these steps. I also pray that you are able to internalize the information in this little book so that it will get you on the road with the understanding that it's a never-ending journey. This is the beginning of a walk to the oneness with Allah God. This is a reference to a subject matter that cannot be exhausted because this subject matter explores the depths of the mind. I thank Allah for using me to tell the story of this journey in hopes that it will feed the heart and mind of the reader to go deep enough into your mind, heart, and soul to make the connection with the power of Allah God within to meet and overcome all obstacles in our path. May Allah bless us with the light of understanding. Assalamu alaikum.